afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on feedback loops as part of HCQ's new webinar series, Partnering with Purpose. My name is Chanel Moore, and I am part of the consumer engagement team here at Health Consumers Queensland and will be the host for this webinar today. So we're pleased to provide this opportunity and to have wonderful guest speakers joining us and sharing their experiences and insights and real-world examples of the importance and the impact of feedback loops. So hopefully after the session, you'll come away with some helpful, practical takeaways, and we absolutely welcome people to keep the conversation going with us with feedback loops and reach out to us with any questions to discuss your work and how you can communicate what you're doing and how you're doing it with your community. So I would like to begin with an acknowledgement of the traditional custodians on the land in which we're all meeting today from across the state of Queensland. I'm joining from Meanjin, the land of the Turrbal and Yagara people, and we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as cultural authorities of the world's two oldest living cultures. I also extend that respect to all First Nations people who are joining us today. So today we're talking about feedback loops. So we definitely encourage you to put any questions through that Q&A box. My wonderful colleague Tara, who's joining us here, she's going to be in that Q&A box and is able to assist with anyone who's got any questions and wants to ensure that they get through to one or all of our speakers. So I'm really pleased that we can introduce you to our guest speakers. So joining us today, we have Anna Rowlandson from Ethnic Community Council of Queensland, Juliet McAleer, a consumer advocate and researcher, amongst many other things, and Doreen, team leader and social work therapist from Ethni. So Anna, Juliet, and Doreen will all speak about feedback loops, the work that they've been doing in community, why they think they're important, and providing some more insight that they can share from their work and their community. And they will also share more information about themselves as we go through. As I said, they are many, many things and have got a lot of really good information for us to all learn from and ask questions. So first, we're just going to go through and really just sort of start exploring or re-exploring the concept of feedback loops together before we get into hearing from our speakers and the Q&A questions. All right, so what is a feedback loop? That's, I guess, the first question. So we are probably using feedback loops in our everyday lives, whether it's through work, whether it's with community, consumers. There are many, many different sectors that use it and many reasons why. Essentially, we want feedback loops to be a circular process, right? We want to turn the input or the feedback that we hear into output, into actions. We want to have those actionable outcomes and be able to tell people that because of what we heard, we were able to do X, Y, Z. And then that in turn can lead to further feedback. We're always looking at how can we learn more, what can we do differently next time? And we know that community needs can evolve. It's not a stagnant process. So the feedback loop is really to help us to do that continuous improvement or to continue to understand and check in with what's important to the community members that we're working with. Now, one of the big things that we talk about with feedback loops is that it gives us that opportunity as well to help to build that trust and that relationship that we have with people we're working with, and an opportunity to really ensure that what we've heard is correct. It gives us that chance to say, is this really how you feel? Are we understanding you correctly? And to validate the stories or the data or the narratives that you're hearing. We know that it's so important to share the impact as well, to say to people that because of what you've shared with us, because of what you've discussed, we can see the impact, because now that can lead to these changes that we will make or what we might be able to now consider because we haven't had that perspective before. What's really important as well is that it helps prepare people for future consultations. As I said, the work that we do is not stagnant. And as we evolve and we learn more and our own internal infrastructure or needs change, we do need to continue to have that ongoing engagement with consumers and community. So by providing a feedback loop on what we did in, say, June, and then come December, we need to do further work. We know that the people we need to engage with have received that update. They feel informed. They feel like they've come along the journey rather than sort of left wondering, well, what happened with that feedback? Will I need to give further feedback? Did they understand what I meant when I shared my story? So I guess thinking about that circular process again around that opportunity to sort of never close off the door, never close the door to having opportunity to keep validating what you're hearing and feeding back what it was that you heard. We know that feedback loops are so connected into partnering principles as well, that intentional, transparent, inclusive process of hearing from people, showing that dignity and that focus on improvement. By having feedback loops, we can focus on intentionally gathering and acting on feedback, being transparent and openly sharing the process and the outcomes. We want to really make sure that we're actively seeking diverse voices, respecting dignity by valuing and treating all input with respect, and focusing on that continuous improvement by, always wanting to strive for collecting and acting on feedback to make those ongoing enhancements. And I think that what's really important when we think about those partnering principles as well is that we're always wanting to do things with a good intention and to make sure that we are going to community, hearing from people, ensuring that the people we need to hear from are at the table and that everyone has that voice. And it's so important to let people know what we can do, and perhaps as well why we were not able to make a change. It's important to think about the positives as well as the things that we might not be able to change right now, but this is why. So when we're working with consumers and community, there are a lot of different ways that we'll, hear their stories, experiences, what's important to them. So essentially, sort of breaking that down into collating, analysing, prioritising, then communicating. So many of you will be familiar with all the different ways that we can do this, whether it's through community meetings, social media polls, focus groups, community-led discussions. There are a lot of different ways to hear from people. So I think always thinking about the feedback loop during this stage. So if we are going out to community with surveys, having a think around, well, how would that look then with that feedback loop, particularly if information is de-identified and we may not know exactly who everyone is involved in providing that feedback and giving their time and thought into, the work that you're doing. When we're analysing, we want to really make sure that we give it that due time and consideration to have a really deep understanding of what it is that community is saying. Having that opportunity as well to sort of validate either what you've heard or to get it checked. Words can be interpreted in different ways. We might find that what we're hearing from one community could be quite different to another. So having a really good sort of understanding about what are the key themes or the trends, what is it that we're hearing back from people, and looking at, well, where are their commonalities, or what have we heard before? Of course, it would be great to do everything all at once, all the time, but we know that prioritizing is so important to look at what is achievable, what's important to community, what will have an impact for them based on what they've shared with us, and what could be sustainable as well, what can help community to feel confident knowing that, yes, what they've shared is leading to an outcome that will have ongoing benefit. And, most importantly, communicating that back to the consumers and community that you're engaging with. And as I said, that's a really good opportunity to actually say, well, is this what's important? What are we missing? Is there something else that we should be considering before going any further? Again, it's that circular process, right? Where we're constantly checking in and then seeing how we can turn that input into an output, and then on it goes. So there's lots of different ways as well to do feedback loops. It's actually a question that HTQ get quite a lot, and so we've just listed a few of the ways that people can do a feedback loop. And I think what's really important is to know that there are many different ways. We don't have to always stick to the same way. We can be as creative or as innovative as we like, and I think having that real understanding about as well, like what might work for your community, what ways did we engage them to collate like their feedback in the first place to see what might be a good method. So there's a few examples there. We welcome anyone in the chat to put in any ways that they personally like to receive a feedback loop, or where they might have found they get a lot of really good feedback from their community about what they prefer. You know, particularly when we're engaging community in mixed methods of engagement. So we might be doing online surveys, community discussions, town halls, webinars, a whole mix of methods. We'll be thinking about how can we provide feedback loop to everyone, you know, not just the people we might have sat across from across in a room or met in an online meeting, but all of the people who contributed, regardless of what way or to what capacity, but to really look at how all the ways that we can ensure that people know that we heard them and that we've created some actions, or we've, you know, considered future opportunities. So we know that there's a huge impact, you know, on you know, everyone that we work with when we receive a feedback loop. You know, as I said, we all provide or receive feedback loops in our lives in many different ways. And it's that important part of knowing that what you've shared, it's gone somewhere. You've made a contribution, and then someone else is a witness to what you said, that someone else heard you. It wasn't, you know, sending something off into the cloud, into a void, and not knowing what it was that it led to. And we know that partnering is relational work too. You know, it can take that time to build trust and rapport and an interest in working together and knowing that you have shared values and shared goals. So I think it's a really important thing to always remember when we're working on projects where we have to engage with you know, the wider community, to be thinking at that point, how will we do a feedback loop? Because we know it's going to be important to people to feel that they made a contribution, that they had an impact, that their voice was heard. I think I mentioned earlier as well that the feedback loop is not just about, you know, sort of the positives. It's equally important to share what you can't change and why. And I think that can really help to gain further insight into understanding the health system, or whichever sector that you're in, and engaging consumers. It might help people to understand more around financial constraints, or some of the processes involved in achieving the change that perhaps, you know, consumers or community may have put forward. If we don't know why a solution or an idea or recommendation is not able to be implemented, it can be difficult, feeling a bit like, well, why, or what can we do differently next time? So I think it's a really good opportunity to provide that further understanding about, you know, the way that your organization or the greater system can work. You know, it's also a great opportunity to actually be able to connect different projects to other activities that people are doing. We can take learnings from a feedback loop, not just for one project, but connect it to other things that we're hearing from consumers or community, and potentially share with other, you know, colleagues or partners to say, this is what we heard from community. It could also be really beneficial for the work that you're doing, and speak with you know, consumers and community about that as well. Of course, it's always, you know, a wonderful feeling to feel valued, you know, that you're part of something, that you're included, but also to minimize that space for assumptions. You know, if we're not receiving a feedback loop, you know, our minds can come up with our own reasons as to why that might be. You know, we're not all mind readers, so it's really helpful for people to feel you know, part of that conversation, to know why it was, and not left wondering if there might be a reason. Was that feedback not what you were looking for? Was it not helpful? Was it unrealistic? There are so many different things that people might be thinking or sort of circling around in their mind. So providing that feedback loop has a huge impact on everyone feeling like they're on the journey with you. So change or no change, what we share really demonstrates that we've listened, we've acknowledged the concerns raised, and we've not simply ignored it. It is something that we've noted, that we've witnessed. So there are many more impacts, many more ways that we can, provide feedback loops. But what we'd really like to do is to hand over to the wonderful guest speakers here, because this webinar really is an opportunity for us to all hopefully learn something and take something away, look at what we've all been trying or doing and where we all want to make some changes or to keep the conversation going. So I will hand over to Anna. I'll pop myself on mute, and then Anna, the floor is yours, and then Tara and I will keep an eye on that Q&A box as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chanel. Thank you for the invitation to share today a little bit about what the work that I'm involved in. As Chanel said, I'm Anna Rawlinson, and my role at Ethnic Communities Council of Queensland is the Manager of Community Development and Engagement. And today I just wanted to share a few real-life examples of some of our recent projects and one of our current projects that we are working on, and I guess how feedback loops are a very integral part of the way that we work at Ethnic Communities Council with many different multicultural communities. So in case you don't know us, we are the peak body for multicultural communities for Queensland. Next year is our 50th year of existence. So we're just about to have a 50-year anniversary next year, which is pretty exciting. And I was really pleased to learn recently that our peak was actually established because the state government knew that it was important to have a voice on behalf of multicultural communities back then. So I would also say that today, I think it's actually even more important to have the voices of multicultural communities amplified to decision makers, because as you probably know, out of Australia, 50% or more than 50% of Australians were either born overseas or their parents were born overseas. So we have a huge percentage of our population who are from multicultural backgrounds. And my work in the community development space under the peak body, we really work initially in what I would say is proactive engagement. So I think one of the points that Chanel made earlier is about building trust with people. And it is of critical importance particularly within multicultural communities, to build and maintain trust. And the way to do that is through, I would call it, proactive engagement. And that means going to join people where they are at and meeting them in their spaces at events that are important to them, and being open. I heard a great phrase yesterday about being open to unlearning. So I think that it is really important that we come with a non-judgmental attitude and be willing to learn and unlearn things that we may have known before. So the first project that I want to tell you about and how we kind of came through the feedback loop process. My predecessor in my role and our CEO held a whole lot of engagement meetings with different multicultural community members and leaders, and noticed a theme or a few themes of concerns that were being raised by those people in those meetings. So they called together a mix of different community members and leaders to run some consultation sessions on those key themes that they had picked up throughout their many different engagements. So there were 5 key issues around intergenerational disconnect, around mental health, around domestic and family violence, around women's health and issues. And I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the 5th one, but there were 5 key topics that were of concern to people. So we brought together community leaders and members to discuss these topics and to hear them in a bit more detail of what was of concern, what were the main issues, what would they like us to be talking about related to these topics. So 2 groups, 2 consultations were held in person and 1 online at the same time. Following those consultations, we actually brought the key findings from that group of discussions to our members meeting. So we are a member-based organisation. We have approximately 250 associations and approximately 250 individuals who are our members. And we hold quarterly members meetings about different topics. So we brought to our members meeting the findings of those initial consultations, and we asked the people in the room if there was anything else they felt needed to be added to these topics of concern, and the issue of racism was added to those key topics, which is something that unfortunately is very common and that people face on a regular basis in many different spaces and places. So during that meeting, we also asked the attendees to vote and rank those issues and tell us what was probably the top priority for them or their communities. And what ended up happening was they voted mental health as the number 1 priority for them. So what we did after that for our next project, which was funded under a state government, we actually co-designed a resource for community leaders on mental health and mental health service supports that are available in the community. And that project was 4 different workshops, which again, we brought together people in hybrid. So we had some in person and some online. And we developed the resources for our community leaders and active community members based on what they thought was the most important information to share and what was needed. And that information has now been put on our online learning space, on our ECCQ online learning platform. So that's just one example of how I guess we connected back in with community on several different occasions in different contexts to get the feedback and then build on and turn that into actionable outcomes. The second example that I would like to share is our current project that we are working on, which is a research project into the sustainability of multicultural organisations across Queensland. So we were approached by Multicultural Affairs Queensland to conduct research in collaboration with QUT, and we, I guess, worked with people from Multicultural Affairs, with ECCQ and QUT to design a survey which was sent out to Multicultural Affairs Queensland's network and our networks. And we conducted 9 focus groups, 7 of which were in person across different areas. So we went to Logan Gold Coast, to Brisbane, we held several, and Toowoomba. And then we held 2 online, targeted specifically at North and then Southwest and Central Queensland. And based on all of that data, we now have a draft report that has identified what sustainability means to multicultural organizations, the different types of resources that are of priority for multicultural organizations, and some of the big barriers or enablers to accessing resources. And that draft report, we're in the middle of getting feedback right now. We have gone to Cairns, was actually held last night, was a session in Cairns to get feedback on the draft report to, I guess, get feedback from people of do they feel that the findings and the way that the findings have been described in the report really does reflect the needs and the barriers and the understanding of sustainability of multicultural organisations. And we also held in Brisbane, Toowoomba, Pimpama feedback sessions in person, and we've held 2 online. So that's, again, another example of us getting feedback on the initial information that was shared with us before we go to launching the report on those findings and then moving into a phase of looking into solutions to those pain points and barriers that have been identified. So that's my second example. And my third example that I want to share is an ongoing project, which I guess is a bit related to my first example. As mentioned, when we went to our members, the issue of racism was raised as a key area of concern. And in addition to that, we hear from individuals about their own lived experiences. And we commissioned some research that was conducted a couple of years ago on racism in schools. And that report was published on our website early last year. And then since then, we have been going to different groups to discuss this issue and to talk with community members and stakeholders about the issue of racism. What can we do about it? How can people, I guess, be equipped to manage when an issue of racism arises? And we have also been advocating within government departments based on our research for some changes because there was recommendations which were put also in our policy papers. And those recommendations have been accepted by the government and are currently being researched into which of those recommendations is actionable and which of those is going to be the most effective to deal with this issue. So the government has now commissioned some research to identify which of those recommendations can be implemented. So I guess, again, with that project, we heard the issue from our members and communities. We commissioned the research, and then we've taken that research and used it to advocate for change to decision makers, but we have also taken it back to communities to discuss this issue, which has been raised, and I guess empower people to be able to respond when this occurs. So I think, sorry, I may have talked too long. I'm sorry if I've talked too long. I think that's all I wanted to share. I will hand back to anyone and I'll be able to answer any questions that anyone might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was great to have those 3 real examples that I think probably all of us here in this webinar are probably thinking about, okay, that's a really great idea or principle to take away into our day-to-day work. So thank you for being so open and generous with sharing the work that you've done. And I'm sure I speak for everyone that we're, really excited to see what you're doing in your ECCQ is doing. And yes, thank you again, and look forward to hearing more as you progress with that work as well. I will now hand over to Doreen, if you're happy to have a chat and share with everyone. And I'll pop myself off on mute, and then we'll definitely hear from Juliet, and then have time for some questions from everyone watching.
Thanks, Chanel. Hi, everyone. My name is Doreen. I know it says I'm the team leader and social work therapist. That's an old bio that I just quickly sent to Chanel. But my title has just been recently changed, and I'm the Wellbeing Program Manager. And this means I still get to do the same things as team leader and still practice therapy within my role, but they decided to just compress it a bit because my work was just a bit yeah, I do a lot of things and I wear a lot of hats at Ethni. If you don't know, well, my background is I do have a qualification as a master in social work, and I have experience previously with child safety and youth justice, working with complex young people. And I decided to, when I moved into Ethni, I really found a lot of belonging and just that community space, which I had not engaged with, but I had previously. Um, like before uni and stuff like that, which I am always passionate about. So it's just been a very beautiful, beautiful journey to work within Ethni and all the amazing people that we interact with on a daily basis. Um, if you don't know Ethni, Ethni is a community-led and women-powered organization. We are based in Logan, and we work alongside culturally and linguistically diverse communities specifically. And we work with specifically women and mostly young women and young people. And obviously, working with people from diverse backgrounds, we always have the perspective that we know we have to support their family to some capacity. So we always ensure that we provide that scaffolding for the young women who we engage with. And we co-create programs and we promote well-being and inclusion and connection. And this is from our different programs. And within my well-being manager role, I do take care of the different programs which are just focused on well-being. And currently we have Big Sis, and we also have Mawa, which is a social enterprise. So Big Sis is a mentorship program, and then we have Mawa, which is our social enterprise. And also we have Ride the Pride, which is a collective healing space for young queer people, and they're able to come and catch up. So basically, the model of Ethni is everything around co-design. All the projects and all the programs that we create, they're all based on co-design and co-development and co-led with the community. Because our workforce is built with the young women from the community. Everything that we do is supported by the community, if that makes sense. And they're the ones who lead us to come together to be like, oh yeah, that looks okay. Maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that. But initially, in terms of like the idea basis, once we apply for a grant, because we are grant managed, if that makes sense, like grant funded. Any program that we that we apply for and it comes through, we sit down with the whole team and we're like, how can we achieve this? And we're able to see ethnic community members who we think would be best to engage with this project or program, because I think the goodness of Ethni, we are able to really form those relationships. So we're able to know our community members on a really personal level in terms of like their passions and things that they would be interested in. And we're able to, identify those potential, qualities that they have. So we're able to, identify them, call them up, and we sit down in a co-design setting. Depending on the project, either we have two co-design sessions or we have one. And then from that, the members who have participated in the co-design will be the community members who will stay in place to see the project into fruition until the end. And we have seen this to be very powerful because we are able to support the community and create something that is actually needed. Instead of just thinking about what we feel is best for the community, we are led by the community to know that this will suit young women within the CALD community, or a specific community if we're targeting a specific community. And this has been really successful for us, and we are able to sit in that feedback loop, as you call it, in a constant manner, because we are still being able to be taught or even learn that this is working right now for this session, but the next session probably this needs to change, or how we can change it. So we have like maybe a prior at the beginning, 1 or 2 sessions for co-design, and then we have a check-in session, which is probably like we divided it up into quarters. So a quarter check-in of the project, depending on the length amount of time, to see how things are going, then a mid, then a quarter, then at the end. But still, the community members are still participating throughout the project, either by running the event, either by being MCs at the events or other sessions. We run all our programs mostly around collective healing spaces, and that's always our model, and it's always lived experience and peer-led. So yeah, they're able to do specific different things within the project according to their strengths, their skills, their interests, and their passions. And they're able to get paid while doing this. So it is a form of employment, and we are pro supporting their employment and how we can empower them in a financial manner, because we know that the young women that we connect with are real pillars of their community and of their families. So giving them that work experience and still being paid for it becomes a way of us empowering them. And that's why we prefer to do this rather than a focus group, rather than a survey. We just feel like this is more meaningful, and this is more authentic and very raw in terms of like the feedback that we receive and the evaluation, and how we just like see the project to fruition, or the program that is running. And with Big Sis, we have been so successful because how it was run as a pilot, we have seen that the young women who were mentored have come back to be mentors, and we are now enrolling them to become peer mentors to the other mentees who are coming on board, or who are being referred to into the program. And for context, our Big Sis was initially set to run for social engagement, and that's because Ethni provides that community sense and community sense, and like sense of belonging as well for young women, and because we're very warm and everyone is able to be who they are and not leave any of their labels out of the door. They come in as they are with everything that they have, and they're able to be supported. But after the first pilot, we realized that most of the young women who are being referred actually needed a lot of support within mental health. And from that, now we were able to pursue a mental health grant and model. So we're able to focus now on just mental health while still providing that holistic and scaffolding support. And one of our biggest success was through the Big Sis program. One of the young women who came back to be a mentor to the others came back and also did their placement which they were pursuing a diploma in mental health. They came and did the placement at Ethni, and now they're now running the program Ride the Pride, which is the collective healing space for queer people within the CAL community. So you can just see how this is just such a like full circle moment in terms of like when you engage community, and when you provide those opportunities for for empowerment, to grow their skills, or even to just see where they're at. They can be like, community has such such great strength and power to be able to still come back and do the same in its own, like it's just a very beautiful thing to see. And that's how we run our program. So the feedback loop is something that happens constantly, and we're just seeing it feed into all our programs and everything that we do at Ethni. And that is the same way that our enterprise Mawa, which is a florist, and we we do candle making, and all that. It also just emerged through the community because we all sat and were like, oh, we need, something nice that women can do, and what can we do, and how can we connect with the other generational and have that like the way Anna was talking about that intergenerational disconnect. So, and that's how the Mawa was created. And with every 10 gifts that we sell through the enterprise, we are able to run a workshop to bring older, mature age women in the community to come do a workshop and connect with each other and form a community for themselves. And even now we're realizing that it's not only mature age women who are isolated, but social isolation and loneliness occurs in every phase. And we were able to know this because we are engaging with community in every step of the way. So, and yeah, one of the successes that we have had, for example, with uh, the project that is called Well Sisters that we ran with support with the Department of Health. It was around cancer screening. Just through co-design, we were able to, it was a co-design project, and it was called Well Sisters, and it was a campaign around cancer awareness. And we engaged with African, Pacifica, and Middle Eastern women. And this led to a 45% increase in cervical screening awareness just through the program, which ran for about, I think, 6 months. And this was just the feedback that we could see. And we did our feedback through recordings, like live recordings during the sessions. Like would ask if anyone wants to have a chat to one of our videographers to say something about the session, what they learned and whatnot. And we're able to collect all this footage that we later created into our resource that we uploaded into our online platforms of social media to show the message of to create that awareness of cancer screening awareness. So that is just some of the ways that we are able to be innovative in terms of collecting data and still receiving that feedback from community directly. And obviously our great success is the Big Sis program, which I have talked about. And it's just because it's just shaped itself through feedback through the entire process, through the because of the co-design process, and it's peer-led with lived experience. We're able to see where we need to plug in and change. And now we're able to, we have been successful to receive a grant to now run it with a mental health perspective, and we'll be having it from July, which is just really great. I think for the challenges, I can say with feedback loops, from my experience as someone who is constantly receiving emails to run focus group sessions, it's just that consultation fatigue for myself and my community. Because it's a one-off situation, it feels very transactional. So because it's paid with gift cards, and I understand that there are some community participants would be happy to receive those gift cards and go for go for the focus group, and they don't want to be involved. But I feel it's still important to ask the participants, or to have a plan of whether they want to be involved further, post the consultation phase, because it's their intellectual property that they're giving to you through those focus group sessions. And I feel like the challenge is just that constantly being asked for consultation opportunities, but then it's just that one-off, which feels really unfair. And that's with me, with anyone who comes to me, I always have to, ask, will they be involved post the consultation group? Like, is there any plan for, them to be involved as an advisory group, or to some extent? Because you can see the program is running for 4 years, but they're only being involved at that prior, like at the prior beginning. And obviously their information builds the project and builds the program. But so that's just one of the challenges. Another challenge is just ensuring that there's language support and cultural safety in every step. And that's how we have been able to navigate through that for us when we were engaging community members in Toowoomba and in Cairns. Instead of partnering with organizations, we decided to partner with community champions, and you can call them community leaders. Community champions is these are the people who are in the community who are either well known and this is something that they do, but it's not their job. And we're able to work with them to put the word out about the how about the project and what's the purpose of it, and be able to drop them into the conversation to talk to the other community members who know them and tell them about their projects, that we're just not strangers coming to be like, hey, this is happening, come through. Like, it's just, that's really out of touch because we value partnership and we value involvement and co-design again. So we were able to partner with community champions and they really made our event successful in those regional areas. And they also came and we paid them for their time to do that work in terms of like connecting with community and building that relationship and telling them about the project. And they also came to the event and supported to run the event by providing that language support and cultural safety in ways that we could not. Because even though we are an organization that is, really diverse, we don't speak all languages. So having that language support is always important. And one other thing that I feel like is a challenge is just capturing that evaluation authentically. Because ensuring feedback reflects the real voice and the emotions and the experiences of the community. Sometimes a survey just does not do its service. Sometimes just writing 32% or, it just doesn't do its service. And that's why we prefer to do either a voice recording or in-person check-in, even though it takes time. But it's good to have that in your grant proposal so that you can ensure that you are actually capturing the evaluation very authentically and it speaks to the voices of the community members who participated. And with that, our consultation model has strengthened the community trust because that's why I get all the emails around, can your community just get involved in this project to do this and this? And because we are able to, connect with our community in that really personal level and not make it transactional, because we are able to provide them with an opportunity to earn some money, not just a gift card, and to also grow their skills and their passions in different ways that they maybe had not even imagined. And with that, we have improvement of participation and programs that are shaped culturally safe, and we're able to create this sense of ownership. And I feel like that's so important. It's very sensitive to come and ask for someone's information and they tell you their story, and you can use that story to to create programs and projects or to answer the questions of the problems that they have or the issues that they're currently facing. But if there's no that ownership to be like, I was part of that and I helped to create that, community doesn't have an opportunity to have that change, if you get what I mean. Like because the change occurs in the beautiful services or the research papers that have been created, but if the community does not feel it, does not understand that this actually came from us and this was created by us and for us, I don't think you can be able to see a successful engagement with whatever thing that you're trying to achieve, because it means that they've not been given the opportunity to lead what you're trying to create. And they see themselves in the programs, in the policies, and the spaces that they co-created. And I feel like that's just really valid to keep in mind, especially with the in terms of feedback loops. Yeah. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doreen. And there's so many things I feel like we could all three of you could share and talk with us for so much longer. There's, as you said, like that co-design process, you're constantly getting that feedback loop, and because it's through that iterative, everyone coming together equally, making decisions. And it sounds like so much amazing work has come from having those organic conversations and constantly listening in, checking your understanding and working with community around what local, like what knowledge and insights they have. So yeah, amazing to hear about all of that work. And we'll certainly be sending out, when we send out the on-demand recording, links to both Ethni and to ECCQ as well, so that people can learn more about the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for, again, being so generous and sharing. And it's clear how much of a very connected and respectful partnership you have with community, and that duty of care and wanting to make sure that anyone that you partner with aligns with those same values as Ethni stands for. So thank you so much for sharing. And I think that it'll be fantastic, Juliet, to hear from you, as I'm sure you'll be able to add a lot of additional insights into that. All right, so Juliet, I'll hand over to you.
Hi, Chanel. Thank you for that. Can you all hear me okay? Excellent. That's great. Thanks for the introduction. You can see my bio up there on the screen, so I won't bore you with all the details, but I'm here in the capacity of a health consumer to provide the perspective of someone who has been asked for my input into a variety of health-related projects and initiatives. I will add, though, that I am coming to you from Butchulla country on the Fraser Coast, and I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which my family and I live here. To me, feedback loops aren't just good practice, they're a matter of integrity. So when you invite people to share their story, their insights, their time, and their expertise, especially when that expertise is grounded in lived experience, you take on a responsibility to respond in a way that appropriately honours the weight of that contribution. And that's not just with thanks, but with something tangible. So something that echoes what you have heard and shows how it shaped what came next. Most of us, in my experience, aren't looking for validation of our presence or praise for our participation. We just want to know that what we offered had meaning and that it made a difference. Because we're not just sharing experiences, we're offering expertise that's shaped by our lived realities, and often by things that we wouldn't choose to speak about unless we genuinely believed that they could help create change that matters to us. And when there's no response and no feedback, it doesn't just feel disappointing, it undermines trust, and it chips away at the motivation to contribute again. And over time, it turns what could have been partnership into something that can feel a little transactional or extractive, or at worst, even, dare I say it, exploitative potentially. And the way that I think about feedback loops is this: don't ask for my story if you're not going to tell me what you did with it. We often hear people talk about consultation fatigue, and I'm not saying that this is not a real thing, it absolutely is. But I personally don't think that it's fatigue from being asked. I think it's exhaustion from giving your time and your insight, and sometimes even your trauma, and never quite knowing how it landed or if it made any difference at all. That's tiring. Feedback loops are how we know that our work and our voices didn't disappear, and that they're actually more than a courtesy. They're actually evidence that we were heard and that our participation was genuine. That our feedback wasn't used to simply prove that engagement occurred and the box was ticked, but to actually influence what happened next. So feedback loops build trust, even when change is not possible, or when there are limitations to implementing our suggestions. I feel like most consumers don't expect magic. We just want honesty. And if something can't be implemented, just say so and explain why. And that is also a feedback loop. And this kind of transparency matters more to me personally as a consumer than perfection. And when feedback loops are built into your organizational culture from the very beginning, they also become a form of accountability and a safeguard against tokenism. Because if you know that you'll be sitting in front of consumers at the end of your project to explain what you did with their input, you approach the whole process differently. You listen more carefully, you document more thoughtfully, and you collect and you incorporate what you're hearing more mindfully. It's a safeguard against complacency and tokenism, and it's an ever-present reminder for you during your project of your why. So last week, for example, I published an opinion piece in The Guardian about what it means when healthcare systems rely on the self-sacrifice of clinicians instead of ensuring adequate resourcing. What stayed with me about this experience of contributing my voice and my work to this particular issue wasn't just seeing my byline in the publication, it was actually the follow-up that occurred after that. The Guardian continued to pass on written feedback to me from people who were impacted by the piece. I have emails in my inbox that I will genuinely treasure, not because they validated me as an eloquent writer, but because they told me that I was heard, that my message made a difference to someone else. And that's what a good feedback loop can look like. And it wasn't fancy, it's just human. Some of the most meaningful engagement that I've experienced has had strong feedback loops that were built in by design from the beginning. When I contributed to the development of an app that was designed to support bystanders to step up in situations of domestic violence, those who contributed, like myself, were invited to the launch, we were named in the report, and we were kept in the loop about what happened to the work that we'd done together. I received a brief celebratory LinkedIn message sometime after the app was launched to let me know that the app had been downloaded over 14,500 times. And I got such a buzz from that. That simple personal message just really made my day and described the impact of the work we'd done together in such a tangible kind of way. And in contrast, I've also participated in research interviews that ran for over an hour, where I gave thoughtful, raw, honest responses to the questions that they wanted answers to. But despite being asked if I'd like to opt into updates about the project and my contribution, I actually heard nothing back. And that's happened more than once. I also had an experience of being involved in a project that I'd not heard anything from until I saw the launch and the final report announced publicly on social media. I went in to read it and I could see that some of the things that I had contributed were included, unacknowledged, but nobody had told me the launch was imminent. And I just felt when I saw it online as I was scrolling my phone on Instagram, very, very disconnected from the process and from the final product as a co-contributor. And I felt a little bit like I had been overlooked, not kind of in an intentionally excluded kind of way, but that I was regarded as unimportant in the scheme of things. And that can sometimes feel very jarring when you put your heart and soul into something, and it diminishes that good feeling that we get from being able to contribute to your work. And I don't want to overstate the impact of these oversights. It's not the end of the world. I understand that people get busy. It hasn't impacted my life in any particular major way, but it did communicate a message that I paid attention to. And that message was that your involvement ended when we got what we wanted. The invitation to speak was real, but the invitation to matter and to partner was not. And like I said, I didn't dwell on it until I started thinking about feedback loops for this particular webinar. But when I saw a follow-up study from this same organisation, again calling for participants to talk about this very rare health condition that I have, and I assume that they find it difficult to find participants, I just scrolled past. And that wasn't because I was angry. It was just because I genuinely didn't know whether my contribution would result in anything meaningful. And I've had enough positive experiences of engaging with other organisations and projects and initiatives that I wasn't about to prioritise this one. Sometimes it's not the big breaches that fracture trust. It's the small but important courtesies of partnership that get overlooked. And over time, they actually really matter. Not because they cause dramatic fallout, but because they quietly teach us where we're not being met as equals. We don't disengage because we've stopped caring about the issues. We disengage because we're reading the room. We're paying attention to who our genuine allies are, and we're prioritising our energy where it's most likely to count. So feedback loops don't need to be elaborate, but they do need to be relational and real. And here are 5 things that I thought of that help maximize the benefit of feedback from a consumer perspective. One is make sure you close the loop, even if there is no big update yet. If things are delayed or if they're still in progress, just say so. Even a quick message like, here's where we're up to and when we'll be back in touch, can maintain trust. Silence is what erodes trust, not delay. And if you're getting back to people sometime after their participation, just give us a reminder of what we were part of. You can say something like, in November 2023, you attended a session on X. Here's what we heard, what we did, and where we're at now. And for me, that small context cue helps us to reconnect. And especially for people involved in multiple projects, or those of us like myself who live with a brain injury, that can be really important. 2, acknowledge the contribution and not just the topic. So don't just say, thanks for your feedback on service design broadly. Really good feedback is specific. Something like, you raised something important about dignity and power, and that helped us to see this differently. And if something shifted your thinking, even if the suggestion wasn't actually adopted in your project, you can still say something like, you helped me to see this issue differently. And that's going to, that shift will stay with me, and it's going to influence how I approach this issue in the future. That's what makes it relational instead of transactional. 3rd is be transparent. When the outcome isn't what you hoped for, people don't expect magic, but we do expect honesty, like I've said. You can say, here's what we considered, here's what we could act on, and here's what we couldn't, and here's why. And if you heard a variety of views that didn't all agree from consumers, because we don't, we all, disagree on things naturally, like people do in the community, you can say that too. Feedback loops aren't about consensus, they're about respect and about clarity. People need to see the thread, not just the final decision. I think even like a bullet list or a simple infographic can help show people that there was a process, how their information was considered, and that people weren't just speaking into a void. Number 4 is to make feedback accessible. How you share information matters. Some people want a 60-page PDF with all the detail, like myself, but others will just want a 3-minute summary, a quick email, a newsletter article. Some will prefer a phone call or a quick Teams check-in. What matters is not choosing the right format. It's just in the recognition that people access and process information in different ways. And if you're not sure what somebody needs, just ask. Offering a couple of options shows that you respect their time, their attention, and their capacity, and that you're thinking about inclusion, not just delivery. Accessibility is more than just about format. It's about meeting people where they're at and making it easier for them to stay engaged. And number 5 is to show people how they made a difference, even in small ways. You might say something as simple as, your words helped us reframe this section of our report, or your example changed how we understood what was at stake more broadly. Even if the change wasn't huge, knowing that we were heard and taken seriously keeps us invested. And that's how you sustain engagement over time, by showing that feedback wasn't collected and forgotten, that it lived on. And that's also how you move as an organisation from performance to partnership, by treating feedback like an ongoing relationship, not just a transaction with a start and a finish date. People often tell consumers that we're brave for sharing our stories or for surviving the things that we've survived. But personally, I would rather have my courage recognised not in well-intended words, but in you meeting with me where I'm at with courage of your own. And at the very least, that should include holding yourself accountable by showing me what you've made of my contribution and effort. I genuinely believe that authenticity and courage in partnerships, especially in spaces where power, risk, harm, and structural inequality are in the room, as they always are in healthcare, are essential for meaningful change. Because partnerships in healthcare are not, or at least they shouldn't be, transactional. They are relational by nature. Real relationships involve responsibility on both sides and an attempt to balance and mitigate power where possible. And as we all know, information is power. And that's what a feedback loop is. Share it. Sharing feedback is a way of sharing power. Authentic engagement requires much more than just good intentions. It requires both planning and a willingness to sit with discomfort, especially the discomfort that comes with confronting power. Because power isn't always formal. It often lives in the quiet decisions. It lives in who defines what counts, whose voice carries, who gets the final word, what information is shared, who is remembered, who is thanked, and who is forgotten. So to wrap up, don't treat feedback loops as an afterthought or a box to tick. Build them in from the beginning, not because it looks good, but because it sustains trust and is an investment in future engagement. Because when you follow up on feedback, you're not just respecting the input, you're respecting the person. And that's how we shift from performance to partnership. And that's the kind of system that I want to be a part of. And I think many of you do too. And that's why you're here listening to this webinar. So thank you for having me.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Julia. And gosh, really so many powerful things that you've all said, whether it's a word or something you've heard recently, and a lot of that, responsibility in partnership, which is, as you've all said, in one way, shape, or form, it's about relationships and our accountability to each other as human beings, and really, wanting to do right by each other and acknowledging and valuing the work that we all do together. Yeah, as you say, we're all here watching this and part of this because we want to learn more and learn from each other. And I know that Tara and I will most definitely, I'm sure, watch this recording over and chat with our team as well around, well, what can we do as well, working with whether it's organizations or representatives and advocates to ensure that we're part of the solution and ongoing development of our partnering work. So I'll just see if we have any questions come through. I know we've hit the 2 p.m, but if people are wanting to stay on, we can certainly answer any questions. But we will also bring the recording out to everyone as an on-demand resource, and the pre-submitted questions as well. We can share with our speakers if they're happy to share any thoughts later on, and make sure that we can get those responses out. But if anyone joining live has a burning question that they want to ask, then they're welcome to pop it in the chat. Otherwise, if people are happy, we can have a look at a couple of the pre-submitted questions and share them with our speakers today. So we'll just have a look at the chat. I don't think we've got any come through just yet, Tara. Just the one? All right. Okay, I might just pop my self on mute while Tara, if you're happy to read out the question we've got through.
Yep. So what if we have delays in our project and don't have any updates on what we can action? So this one wasn't directed to a specific panelist, so open floor if any of the panelists would like to start.
I'm happy to answer that if you like. I guess, as I sort of mentioned in my presentation earlier, you can still close the loop temporarily. So you can say where things are up to, and a short holding message is all it really takes. Something like, we're still working through the next steps. Here's what we've done so far, and here's when we're going to get back in touch with you. That goes a long way because, like I said, silence is what erodes trust, not delay. And even just a quick message, just keeping people informed, even if it's a broadcast kind of messaging, that tells us that you care about the fact that we've been hanging on, the outcome of the project, and we want to hear about it. It says we see you, but we're just not there yet, and you're part of our team, so we're just keeping you in the loop. And I think that's often all that's needed.
I don't want to add to that because I 100% agree with what Juliet has said. I think the best thing is just to keep people informed no matter what's happening.
And yeah, the transparency is just so important and it's so valid, no matter how icky it can feel. Like, it's, as just Juliet has explained, like, it's way better to just say something than nothing.
Thank you everyone for answering that question, and that's a really good point, Doreen, around that icky feeling. But we've got to work through that and have those important discussions and conversations, right, to keep that partnering work going. And I think, was it you, Juliet, saying meet your courage with our courage, so I think that's a really, that was a really important thing, yes, for us all, I guess, to keep thinking about, certainly for myself. So thank you, all of you. I was just going to say as well that we want to keep this webinar series to be open, and if we're hearing from people out in the world or in Queensland about topics that you care about, things that have come up in your work with community, all of the work that you're doing, that you think this is something I'd love to take to the network, to have people like Doreen and Anna and Juliet speak on, please let us know. We want to be able to provide something that is of help, that you can keep reflecting on, go back to, have conversations with your colleagues. Next time you're planning out a new program or service, like have a chance to look at some of the amazing insights that we're hearing, and then how can we take what's being shared in our planning? How can we use that to work towards co-design or to provide that ongoing relational work with our partners? So please always submit any thoughts. If you've got a topic you want to hear about, the questions that go along with it, let us know. Got the QR code there, but of course, always you can reach out to HCQ so we can have a chat, see what we can do. And again, if you think there's a topic that you'd love to speak about too. If you've been doing work in community, whether as an employee of an organisation, as an advocate, as a community leader, as a community champion, let us know. We'd love to work with you and see what we can do together. So there's that code, but we'll send it all out again with that on-demand resource so that people can have the time to think, not be put on the spot, and then come back and have a discussion with us. But yes, thank you again so much for everyone, and we will absolutely keep in touch with everyone, share insights to any of the pre-submitted questions as well. And hopefully this, again, just not the end of the conversation about this work. We want to come back and share with everyone, what some of the questions were that came through, what some of the responses were, and hopefully do more work in the space together. So thank you very much, everyone.